Hello, hello, and welcome back to episode 26 of the Hardwood Hoops podcast. I'm joined by my co-host, as always, Mr. Ben Jones. How you doing, mate?
Good morning. Yeah, very, very well. How are you?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Apart from the wet dog walk I was just on, as we discussed in our offline chat, the weather is horrendous where we are.
It's no good. It feels like it's not stopped raining for like 3 days now.
Yeah, I haven't been able to go outside and shoot hoops because of coronavirus. You can't do it inside, so I haven't been able to go outside and shoot hoops for like 10 days because it's just constantly been raining here. So not ideal, but at least we've had some NBA finals to watch. Have you enjoyed the first two games? I know we're going to go on in more detail in a minute, but have you had fun watching those two?
Yeah, definitely. Watched the first one on a replay and then watched game two live.
Yeah,
And
you did very well with that live tweeting at such a ridiculous hour. Props to you for that.
um, yeah, no, it's been thoroughly entertaining with all of its ups and downs and peaks and troughs. But like you said, we'll go into that.
Yeah, definitely. So we're going to talk about just two topics on this one because not a lot is happening at the NBA at the moment. So we're going to go through some finals chat, talk about game one and game two, and then our thoughts ahead of game three, which is this evening. And then we're going to go on to talk about Doc Rivers at the end, because that's the other bit of big news we have in the NBA. So obviously the Lakers are 2-0 up, and like I said, game three is this evening. But before we talk about that game, obviously we heard from Adam Silver before the game started. He does a yearly press conference before the finals. He was asked about next season. He's kind of changed his tune and did say that the aim again is Christmas Day, but the realistic target is moving towards January still. So he's optimistic that it'll be January, but he wants Christmas Day. What are your thoughts, Ben? Do you think that that's a reasonable turnaround? That's obviously 3 months, or do you think they're going to struggle for the start of January?
I think if they want it for January, I think they can sort it. You think about really the timescale they put together this bubble. It's incredible they managed to do what they did and pull it off. So I think if they want to start the season in January, I think they definitely can turn it around and get it going. And then even if it's sort of the bare bones, like we're not even thinking about fans in the arenas and stuff, just getting games on can definitely be done. And then you can sort of introduce the rest of it as you go through the season. It's nice to know that that is what they're aiming for as well. But if it starts later, it wouldn't surprise me. I'm sure, as we keep saying, Adam Silver will do what's best for the safety and security of the NBA, whatever that may come to. So fingers crossed for January. But,
Yeah, it wasn't quite as bullish about the fans and the arena idea as well immediately, because I know they wanted to basically start this season with some sort of fans in the arena, like no matter what. That's why they were going to push it back.
yeah,
But it wasn't quite as bullish on that, and I wonder. Obviously, people listening to this might not be NFL fans, but the NFL's had 2 games called off this week, which is the first sign in American sport since 3 months ago where they had to call a game off. So I wonder if he's seen that and thought, the more time we give it, do you know what I mean? The safer it'll be. The safer it'll be for the players, but also the safer it'll be not to have to call games off, because it's much easier to start something and just carry on running through rather than it is to start something and start stopping.
yeah.
So I wonder if that had a little play on his mind in terms of the people coming to watch live. But also he knows that whenever he starts, if there's no fans in the arena, the TV contract's huge, isn't it, with the NBA? So people are going to sit at home and watch it regardless, especially if they do manage to get Christmas Day or MLK Day, which is in January. But I guess just watch this space, and we'll all have to just focus on the draft and free agent signings whenever they happen for a few months.
Yeah, fingers are crossed.
Definitely. Well, next season, obviously, we're going to have a new champion. And game one started off quite well. So the Heat jumped out to a huge lead, mate. Bam was on fire defensively, and everyone was scoring, really. Jimmy started quite well, but it was kind of a team effort. And that was with the Lakers going to start Dwight Howard. Midway through the first quarter, the Lakers took out Dwight Howard and then went on an absolute huge run for the next quarter and a half. And the game was almost over at halftime. What did you think to that start? Did you think that the Lakers were wrong in the end to start Dwight Howard? Because I know a lot of people wanted them to, but they got off to a slow start. Or do you think that was just NBA basketball where there's runs in the game?
Yeah, I think it was more the runs kind of thing, because even later on in the game when they went back to the bigger five, they kept running away with the game. I think it's just the Heat were playing their best basketball at that point in time, defensively and offensively. And the Lakers were struggling. The shots weren't falling like they wanted them to. And eventually the momentum switched, really. Obviously, the Lakers are 10 times better with AD at the 5. Everybody knows that. That's when they are dominant. But I think it's a good idea to start a big out there and save Anthony Davis defensively to begin with. So he's not drawing fouls early. If that, they're using Dwight for that kind of role, run the rims and disrupt it. And if you commit some fouls, it's not the end of the world, because what we'll do is we'll slide Anthony Davis to the 5 and we'll start dominating. So I think it's a good move from the Lakers, personally. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. It seemed more like a run than anything else. Obviously, teams can still target players, and they put Dwight into pick and roll action, but that's just going to happen in basketball. So I agree with you that it was just a run, and Jimmy Butler was on fire actually on both ends of the floor at the start of that game. But even in the end, like I said, it was only a small run to start the quarter. The Heat actually went on to lose the first quarter, 31-28. So the Heat didn't even win a quarter until the fourth, I believe. Obviously, the Lakers started pulling players. So even though they had that good run in the first, it didn't really matter towards the game. The Lakers went on a huge run in the second quarter to kind of take a big lead into the halftime. But the story really of game one was the injuries, I think. We had Goran Dragic go out. Well, I think he played the end of the second, but he went out technically at halftime, but he was injured with about a minute to go in the second. Jimmy Butler rolled his ankle twice, but carried on playing. And Bam, I believe, hurt his neck and carried on playing until the end. And obviously the lead was so big, they pulled him in the fourth. It was a real big shame, I think, mate. I know, obviously, you picked the Lakers to win, so it's good for your prediction. But in terms of a basketball spectator, it's not ideal, is it, to see 3 of the starting 5 get injured, and it looks like Dragic injury is pretty serious.
Yeah, and as a fan, you want to see teams beat other teams at their best. Mm-hmm. Otherwise, it's kind of like, oh, well, they're always going to have that excuse, aren't they? Well, if we had so-and-so, then you wouldn't have won that game, or we would have been able to do this, or you want to see the best play the best. That's why we've gone through this whole season whittling down to these two teams who technically at this point in time are the best 2 teams in the league, and you want to see them playing at their best, because that's what's going to make the most entertaining game. You don't want half of one team to be injured and the other team just walk all over them. Becomes a bit dull and a bit boring there. And just, it's a shame it's these players, like they're great players that we both love to watch and see play. So, and Goran's been playing incredible basketball lately as well. Bam is the key to the Heat's success, and without him, they really are going to struggle. And everybody loves to see Jimmy out there hustling, disrupting, just being himself,
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I hope. Well, it's been said we're going to see Bam in Game 3.
Yeah.
I don't think we're going to see Goran again.
No, I don't think we will either.
Because he's got to think about his health and his contracts and his free agency and things. And Jimmy seems to be as good as new. So let's see Bam back. I want to see that.
Yeah, definitely. So we'll go on to talk about Game 2 in a minute, but like Ben said, Jimmy was fine. He played Game 2. He's due to play Game 3. And Bam didn't play Game 2, but is expected to play Game 3. It was Goran Dragic has got a torn plantar in his maybe right foot, left or right foot.
Yeah.
But basically, the only way he can play is if he gets shot up with quite strong painkillers in that foot each game. And I don't think that's good for the long-term health of that injury. I think it could mean that the foot can be compromised in the future. So I think it's a risk-reward thing that they've got to weigh up, and they are obviously 2-0 down. But we'll go on to talk about Game 3 in a bit. Just ending our thoughts, moving on, to the next part of our thoughts on Game 1. The final score was obviously 116-98. So quite dominant. It was bigger lead at times. Did you think that final score reflected the game, or did you just think that the Heat maybe got closer than they should have in the fourth, just because Lakers pulled their stars?
Yeah, definitely that. I think the Lakers relaxed a bit in the fourth. The Heat made a bit of a run. Kendrick Nunn played really, really well off the bench for them.
Yeah, he scored 18 points.
Yeah, really, really well. He's sort of found his stride again and stepping back into Goron's role, really. So that was really good to see. Yeah, that's all it was. The Lakers pulled their stars and started playing their deeper bench players, and Miami managed to claw it back. And the score in the first game makes it look closer than it was. So I think it's possibly quite good for the Heat there as well. They can look at that and think, oh, you think how much we were down by? We were still sort of within touching difference by the end. That's a positive they can take from it, even though really it wasn't.
The performance wasn't like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I do tend to agree. I think that the score isn't that close, but it's closer than it actually was in terms of watching. I thought if you watch the first quarter, I think you think the Heat are winning by about 6 points, but the Lakers hit timely shots at the end. So, but from quarters 2 and 3, you just look at it and they were down by so many points in each quarter. I think they lost second quarter by 14. They lost the third quarter by 10 points. That's a lot in the middle of the game. That's a lot to give yourself to do in the fourth quarter. And like you said, I think the Lakers relaxed. Anybody that watches basketball has seen this happen when teams go on like 20, 30-point leads. They kind of tend to relax and the other team do get into their offense a bit more. So I think it was just one of those runs. But who was your standout performer in the game for the Lakers? Obviously, AD got 34 points, 9 rebounds. LeBron was 1 assist off a triple-double, which was funny because he hit Danny Green in the corner for an open 3 in the fourth. Danny Green clanked it, and LeBron looked so annoyed. Could tell he was like looking for that triple-double. And then my man KCP got 13 points and scored 3 threes, which just helps the team. That's what they need.
It's AD in game 1 for me. He's just a man mountain. Like, there's just no way the teams that the Heat can touch him at the moment, even with Bam, who they had through the first 3 quarters or halfway through the third, he got injured.
Yeah. Near the end of the third, I think.
Yeah, even with Bam, they just had no answer for him. He's like a man amongst boys out there. For me, like we keep saying, we'll go on to game 2. He was even more dominant in game 2. But for me, it's AD. He seems to be hitting absolutely everything, whether it's a 3, whether it's a turnaround fadeaway with a defender draped all over him, he's still managing to put it up and over, whether it is just a standing dunk from under the rim. He's just playing so well, and it's not just his scoring either. His offensive and defensive rebounding has been phenomenal. He's managing to get a couple of assists, a couple of blocks out there. He's really sort of grown throughout this bubble and this playoff run, and is becoming the true superstar that we all thought he could become.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be my pick for the Lakers. What about yourself?
Probably the same. I just think when you watch the games, he looks like the player that they struggle most to guard. LeBron gets his points and stuff, but it's not as efficiently as it is AD. When you're looking at AD, he's really struggling to miss shots, and he's got a much tougher task at the other end. When the Heat are struggling on runs, the Lakers are not hiding LeBron, that's harsh, but they're putting LeBron on like a Crowder, for example, someone who to help rebound, rather than someone who's going to go in and play one-on-one. Whereas obviously AD is having to mark Bam and be marked by Bam a lot of the time on both ends. So I think AD's performance kind of shines for me. And then when we talk about game 3, we'll go on to talk about finals MVP stuff, because I'm a bit surprised about some of the odds. But we'll go on to that in a bit. So then game 2 was going to be huge for the Heat. Obviously, like we said, they were going to miss 2 of their stars. I think Myers Leonard got the start. Like you said, Kendrick Nunn got those Dragic minutes as well in game 2, but the Lakers still prevailed. and they won 124 to 114. So that's only 1 point less than they won by in game one. But I think visually, game two seemed closer, at least through the first half. What were your thoughts on how that started, and how did you think those players coming in did for the Heat?
Yeah, the Heat really stepped up. The players that they had come in really, really stepped up. Although it was one of those weird games where the Lakers, it was a bit back and forth, and then the Lakers managed to claw out to sort of a 10-point lead, and then they went up by, what were they up by, like 20 plus at one point, and the Heat managed to bring it back, but they could never get within more than sort of 8 points of the Lakers.
Yeah, I think the Heat brought it back in the third, didn't they? And they ended up winning the third quarter as well, but they were down by like 21 points at one point.
Exactly, and they could just never quite do enough to get it over that cushion. The Lakers would hit timely shots, big threes, coming from absolutely everybody, like Kuzma, Rondo, LeBron was hitting them at the right time. AD, everybody was hitting them at the right time. So it was getting to a point where I was kind of expecting Dwight Howard to step out and have a go as well. Even Danny Green was hitting a couple. He did go on a very cold run though when I was watching it, and he missed like 4 in a row. So it's so frustrating because he'd been playing so well up to that point, and then he injured his hip as well. And the Lakers started with J.R. Smith in the second half.
Boom! 3 minutes for big JR.
Big 3 minutes, yeah. Did loads there. He got backed down by Jimmy Butler and fouled him as he went to the basket. That was really good from JR. And that was about all he did.
That was about all he did. Similar to game one, I'll ask you who was your standout performer then, really, for both teams. Do one for each, obviously.
Again, AD for the Lakers, he looked even better in this game without Bam out there. He was literally stood under the basket and just plucking the ball off the backboard and putting it back in, just whenever he wanted. And the Heat, there's 4 of them all stood around him like, what do we do? There's nothing we can do.
14 rebounds as well, which was nice for him.
And they were, again, timely. Just took the air out of the Heat sails. The only player they could get on him really to guard him was like Kelly Olynyk, which not ideal.
No, even though he actually quite well at the other end.
Yeah. He had his moments definitely. And the thing that Heat did well in this game was playing aggressively and getting to the basket. They were getting fouls left, right, and centre. But when they
driving in constantly, you think?
Yeah, just driving. They were getting fouls. They were getting to the line, and they hit. I think it was up to like 28 free throws in a row. They were playing really, really well. It was when they started then to try and cut the lead down in the bigger amounts by kicking out to the threes that weren't falling as regularly as they had been, that they then lost momentum and sort of the run went cold. But players are going to get tired if you've got Jimmy and Andre Iguodala and Jay Crowder all driving in every single time and getting fouled and going against these big-bodied Lakers. They're going to get tired. They're not going to want to do it every time. Although it's working for you, you're getting the 2 or the 3 points because of the foul. And then you're having to go at the other end and defend these big bodies as well. It's not an efficient way to play, especially this day and age. So the Heat need to find a way of, as long as they can start hitting their threes again, there's no reason why this gap can't be closed, especially with Bam back out there. But for me, player of the game for the Heat was probably Jimmy. He's just so consistent, just playing really, really well.
13 assists, 25 points, which is really, really good for a losing team.
Few good moments, considering he went cold last game.
Duncan Robinson's still struggling in this series, isn't he?
Yeah, he's struggling offensively.
Well, and defensively, to be honest. They're targeting him a lot in pick and rolls. Like LeBron targeting him and Hero quite a lot, but obviously Hero's going up the other end and at least scoring at a good level, whereas Duncan's just not a factor in this series. And I've seen some Heat fans kind of want him out the starting lineup to try something different. Maybe add like a Kelly Olynyk in there to get two bigs in there to match the Lakers. So that kind of proves that Duncan's having a bad series because they love Duncan Robinson, and if some Heat fans call him from out the starting lineup, that shows how average his performance has been.
Yeah, well, they've inserted Myers Leonard, haven't they? Given him sort of 10 minutes a game. Kelly Olynyk had 37 minutes. He did play really, really well this game, and I feel like this could suit him because he's not a back to the basket big. He likes to front up or shoot from outside, and if you've got AD out there playing the 5, who's going to want to conserve a bit of energy, he's probably not going to chase Kelly Olynyk out to that 3-point line every time. So
no Howard either.
No, exactly. So it could be a good idea to keep Kelly out there and with Bam, like you said, and play the two bigs that way.
Yeah, then drop Myers Leonard.
Yes. I mean, not that he hasn't played. He's played fine for the minutes he's given.
He's just not good enough offensively, is he?
He's just not a good enough player. That's the bottom line of it. It's tricky to really pinpoint what the Heat need to do, but
because the 3-point shots were falling a little bit in game 1, but they were just giving up chance after chance the other end. And we spoke a lot, didn't we? And anyone who listened to our fan preview as well between Cole and Dan Healy, they spoke a lot about the zone as well. Almost in a positive light, but it's not worked. Zone, the way they're doing it, they're not executing it efficiently enough. They're not getting out to shooters once they catch the ball in the zone. And the other problem is LeBron is just working his way through the zone and basically trying to find where Duncan Robinson and Tyler Hero is. He's finding them and just targeting them, whether it's on pick and rolls, drive to the basket, backing people down, whatever it is, or just getting space to pass to AD, whatever it is. But that has been a bit of an issue for me. But a team that plays so much zone, it's very, very hard just to then swap to man. And if you swap to man, obviously Hero and Robinson are going to have to guard people. And then you come a bit open to pick and rolls. So if Tyler Hero is, I don't know, guarding KCP, for example, all LeBron and KCP are going to do is get into pick and roll every time and make
them switch.
Guard. Yeah, make him Hero guard anyway. So they need to try and fight over those switches and screens. But I'm not sure the zone's working at all, to be honest, just because they got that AD, which is a little bit of a zone beater. And that's probably been the most disappointing thing to see because Heat's defense can be really fun at times. You don't normally count that much defense as fun to watch as an NBA basketball fan at the moment because so many teams struggle to defend. But the way that Heat defend has been really good. But in this series, it's just the game plan's not working. Would you move away from the zone as well?
I think maybe, don't move away from it completely, but maybe switch it up. The thing that was quite clear in that game too was the peaks and troughs in the energy. So you could see them when they were moving well, defending well as a unit in that zone. They were stopping the Lakers. They were getting out on shooters when they needed to. They were collapsing into the middle when AD and LeBron were driving. It worked really well, and they were getting turnovers. And the issue they had at that point is they weren't making it count on the other end because they were putting all their efforts into the one end. Because although
Lakers are getting back as well, weren't they, in transition better than a lot of people thought they would.
Yeah, Lakers have been playing quick. Like they've been getting up and down the court so well. Every player as well, even Dwight, has been able to move up and down that court at a fair clip. They've been doing so well on that front. The Heat, maybe it is worth trying a man, and then you got Bam on AD, Jimmy on LeBron, and then sort of man mark who you can where you can, and then like you said, fight through the screens and do your best not to switch where you can. I still think
you can swap to zone, can't you? At times, like if LeBron's off the court, for example, that would be a perfect time to do it.
Yeah, exactly. Because the biggest issue the Heat have is that they've not played a player that is intelligent as LeBron. He knows exactly how you're playing, who to target, when to do it, how to break them down, when to drive in, when to pass, when to kick. He is so intelligent out on the basketball court that is the Lakers' biggest weapon in a way at times. He knows how to break any game plan you've got, essentially. So it's how do you beat that? That's the trickiest part. And like I said, with AD in the middle, even with the two on that zone collapsing in on him, he's just so big. He's just doing what he wants under the rim. They do need that bam, that athletic presence that can sort of jump up and get a hand to the ball, and just even if he's just disrupting it, making it hard for him, it's going to improve his chances.
Yeah, and stopping offensive rebounds as well, which is another thing that obviously is killing this team at times.
Hugely.
But yeah, aside from LeBron and AD, because we always talk about them a lot, everyone does, to be honest. I wanted to do another little shout out to your boy Rondo, who's not really my boy Rondo, but playing very well.
He's playing
game
very
2.
well.
Yeah, game 2, played insane again. For his role, obviously, we know he's not starting. We know he's not getting 35 minutes a game. Obviously, he's doing his role, but 27 minutes, I believe he got. I've got written down here. But he got 16 points, 10 assists, and him and LeBron got 19 assists between them. And when LeBron was off the floor, Rondo was running that offense as well as he possibly could. So big shout out to him for me, making that second unit much more of a force. Every game in the bubble when Rondo wasn't there, we were saying in general the offense looked bad, but when LeBron or AD weren't on the floor, the offense looked really, really bad.
Yeah.
You kind of almost had a lot of people that like to stand and jump shot almost. And some of them aren't the best defenders that come off the bench. Like we've said before, the Markieff Morris can be a little bit hit and miss off the bench. Kuzma's hit and miss off the bench. But when you have Rondo in that second unit, it really ties them all together. And I've been really impressed with him. What were your thoughts on him in game 2? Because that was definitely his stronger game.
I think I tweeted it's not fair that Rondo and LeBron are on the same team, because you could argue that in terms of basketball awareness and on-court vision stuff, Rondo is maybe like the second or third best player in the league for that, even at his age. His intelligence out on the court is incredible. He went through a passage of play. He did an alley-oop to a LeBron dunk, back-to-back next play, alley-oop to AD dunk from half court, next play up the court, drives in, makes an absolute mockery of the Heat defense, scores again. I think he got fouled on that as well, hits the free throw. He was brilliant out there, not just offensively as well, but his defensive presence out there has been so good. He really, really takes it to their guards and just
moves his feet quite well, doesn't he?
Yeah, really well. He's a long and lengthy guard. When you look at his wingspan and stuff, he's perfect to sort of put in that role to disrupt things. And because he's so intelligent, he can read what the player is going to try and do really, really efficiently. So he has been brilliant for the Lakers out there. He's been better than I thought he was going to be. I thought
I agree.
15 to 20 minutes, rack up a couple of assists, but his scoring has been so much more efficient than I thought it was going to be. So fair play to Rondo. He is a huge part of this Lakers team at the moment.
Yeah, I agree. I think he's not necessarily, because they're not the same player, but like you said, he has been used a little bit as a when LeBron's off the floor or when LeBron needs a little bit of a breather, he'd give the ball to Rondo and let him run the offense.
Yeah.
So he's doing really well. In terms of players of the game for game 2, for me, I agreed on both of yours. So if I had to pick some off-the-wall ones that surprised me, Rondo would have been mine for the Lakers. And obviously, I'm going to go with Kelly Olynyk for the Heat because the man loves a three-pointer and he's got horrendous hair. So I just love it.
Yeah, he's 43% from 3 in that second game. 3 from 7, which for a big popping out, really, really good percentage. 56% from the floor, 9 of 16. So efficient this game.
And like I said, it's good against this team as well because it makes them think about things, extra things, on defense. Because like we said, they've got bigs that either need to rest a little bit defensively because AD does so much offensively, or you've got Dwight Howard. I know McGee hasn't played, but if he ever gets in, it's obviously Howard and McGee who do not want to go and guard the three-point shooter. So no. I think Kelly could be a little bit of a weapon just to try and help you get a little bit of a spark in your offense. When you want to go on these runs that are like 8-0 runs in quick succession, I think he's a player that can just give them a little bit of that. Let's go on and talk about game 3. Another late. Oh no, this is the earlier tip-off, isn't it, Ben? I think is that right?
12:30, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So we say early. Earlier than 2 a.m. And like I said, that game is this evening. A huge game for the Heat. I think there's nobody in the world that would see. Well, if I'm honest, I don't think anybody thinks they've got a chance to win the series now. But if they lose game 3, they really haven't got any chance. Like I said, no one's ever come back down from 3-0. You're not going to come back on a LeBron team from 3-0.
No.
And especially this team with the injuries they've got. So, absolute huge game for the Heat tonight. Obviously, Bam's supposed to play. We haven't heard officially on Gorham, but both of us think he won't. And if he does, then he's going to be playing for a lot of pain. So I'm not sure what performance he's going to get. Let's start off with the Lakers, and we'll move on to the Heat second. What do the Lakers need to do to carry on the success and win Game 3? Is it more of the same, or do you think with Bam in the lineup they need to change a few things around?
Definitely continuing what they've been doing, because obviously we've just said they can break down that zone defense, and one of the main reasons why they've been able to do that is their shooting's been quite efficient. Their threes have been falling quite well, so they need to keep that high shooting percentage. What was it, over 32%? If they shoot over 32% from three, they have won every game in the bubble, kind of thing. So they definitely need to keep that up. AD and LeBron are going to do their thing. But for me, that's the biggest factor. Can these people that have been hitting shots, like Rondo, like Markieff Morris, like Caruso, Kuzma's been playing really, really well. Can they continue this trend, or are they going to have this game is going to be their off night? I think that's the biggest factor for me. What about yourself?
Yeah, I agree. I think the Lakers have been known a little bit, haven't they, to have these offensive stalls almost, where if AD's either not on the floor or not shooting well, even with LeBron, they can kind of go cold, just because obviously we know LeBron likes to facilitate. So if LeBron's flinging the ball around and players aren't hitting shots, the Lakers struggle. And that's when they can kind of get into these little runs of 10, 15 point differences between them and the other team. So I think mentally is going to be key. It's hard to look at the way they played in game 1 or 2 and in all the playoffs, to be honest, with LeBron James and think that they're going to have a stall. But they've done that this season at times, so it's not unknown for them. So I think they need to avoid that. And to avoid that, I think they need to just go to what they're good at. And I think they need to increase the pick and roll as much as possible in game 3 with LeBron in the action. So I just think he can bully a lot of these players down, especially if he do swap from zone. And I just think that AD needs to do his best on Bam, and they need to probably throw Dwight at Bam a few times as well for the fouls, like you said earlier.
Yeah.
That's how I think they need to win. I think they need to limit Bam's impact, because he's going to give the Heat like almost an emotional response coming back. So I think they need to try and limit Bam's impact and use LeBron more offensively in this game. I don't think AD will win you 4 games in a row. I think that you should give LeBron that chance to try and just go all out and win you a game, because I just think the Heat won't have any answers for that. Whereas with Bam on AD, the Heat could kind of slow AD down, even if it's just more mid-range shots. And then, like you said earlier, if the Heat hit their threes, obviously a 3 is better than a 2. Whereas if LeBron drives to the basket, he's going to be drawing fouls all the time. He's going to be getting and ones. We know that he can kick it out to open 3-point shooters, which will help. So I would say that Mr. LBJ to take over game 3 is what the Lakers should do to try and win the game. And if they go Heat limit zone, just go more pick and rolls. That'd be my advice to them.
Yeah.
And in terms of the Heat, obviously having Bam back, we've spoken about loads of times now, is key. I don't know if I would take Duncan Robinson out of the lineup, but if he's not hitting his threes at a regular basis, I would try and change to a more fast-paced lineup. Try and get Kendrick Nunn in there with Jimmy and Tyler Hero as like a 3-guard lineup a little bit more, just because when the Lakers don't score, they have been quick in offensive transition, but obviously they've got quite a big lineup. If you get those 3 guards run down the floor time after time on the other end, I think that could tie the Lakers down and kind of just get you some quick transition points. But it's obvious to say, but the other factor is 3-point shooting, isn't it? We said it in every series involving the Heat that if they carry on shooting the way they shoot, which is the best in the NBA, best in the bubble, 3-point shooting, they'll probably win the game. I'm not sure even if they shoot their best in this game, they'll definitely win the game because it's hard because of LeBron and AD. But I just think getting better open looks from the 3-point range is key, and I just think that they need someone who's not Jimmy Butler or Bam to go off. And I know Kelly Olynyk did that, but that was in a game where Bam didn't play, so they need someone else to go off for 25 plus. And I'm just hoping someone like a Tyler Hero can be that man. What do you see as a key for the Heat to try and win? Is it more defensively with changing how they're guarding AD and LeBron, or you think that Bam being back is just going to give them a boost anyway?
I think you're right in terms of Bam being back is going to give them a huge energy boost, and we've seen with teams where they have a player returning that can sometimes be enough to get them over that hill and get them the win towards the end of the game. Like I said last game, it was like an 8-point cushion that the Heat couldn't quite overcome, and with Bam back in the lineup, he could definitely be the contributing factor that gets them over that deficit and gets them that win. But that relies on, like you just said, someone like Kelly Olynyk or Tyler Hero stepping up and contributing that many points again. After looking at from what I saw in Game 2, where the Lakers were trying to block everything and just committing every foul under the sun, I think the Heat should come out really aggressive and drive everything to start with, and really give it to them and try and draw those fouls early in the game, put them under a lot of pressure, because then defensively for the Lakers, that will make them sort of hesitate, maybe take a step back, and that can then give the Heat shooters that extra half a second of space to catch and shoot that maybe they've been in the series, because the Lakers haven't been afraid to get out there and really pressure those shooters. And that could spark Duncan Robinson to do one of his crazy games, hit like 9 threes or whatever.
Yeah, which he's capable of doing, to be fair, but he's just had a bad 2 games.
Yeah, definitely. He's gone super cold, and they need to find a way to get him back into the game. And for me, that's maybe the best way of doing it, forcing the Lakers to take a step back and guard the paint a bit more, because the Heat haven't been hitting threes, they could kind of use that to their advantage. Maybe the Lakers come out thinking, I'm not going to worry so much about so-and-so because he's cold or blah, blah, blah. And then, especially if they then come out driving straight away, they're going to think even more like, yeah, there's no way he's going to shoot now. And then come out second half, all guns blazing, taking those shots however they come, and hopefully they start falling. They could really do some damage there. So that's where I'd go with the Heat, and maybe even if it's just for 5 minutes over the total of the game, try going man to man, experiment with it, because if it starts to work, play it a bit more, and if it doesn't, go back to your zone. If it's 5 minutes, you're not going to have lost a massive amount of that defensive time out of your system. It's going to, what's that, like a minute and a half over each quarter or whatever that might be.
Yeah.
So those will be the things I'd do if I was the Heat, definitely.
Cool. And then let's move on to some little final predictions. I would like your Game 3 prediction on who's going to win. An update on your finals prediction, if you're going to stick with your 4-1. And then I'll talk to you about finals MVP after, because I've got some odds to give to you before you give your prediction for that one.
Sure. So, like we've said, I think Bam being back is going to be that energy boost for the Heat tonight, and I think the Heat are going to clinch this one in a close game. But then I think the Lakers are going to come back and do the 2 on the bounce again. So I'm going to stick with my 4-1, and this is the game where the Heat come back.
I agree completely. I think that Bam's going to be the difference, and whether Goran plays or not, I think they're going to want to win the game for themselves, obviously, but for him as well. So I think they steal it in a very close one as well. We could even see an OT tonight. I don't think the Heat have got the ability to blow out the Lakers, to be honest.
No.
Unless someone like Duncan Robinson hits so many threes late on that it gets to a point where LeBron just thinks we should take a rest now because this is going to be hard to come back. But aside from that, I don't see any way they can blow them out. So I think a tight Game 3 win for the Heat. And obviously, I've really struggled to see the Lakers not winning 4-1.
The only thing I'm worried about though is so Bam injured that shoulder, didn't he, a couple of games ago,
Yeah,
and it's obviously he re-aggravated it in game one, and I'm worried that he's so desperate to come back that it is still not fully healed, and he's just going to re-aggravate it again.
yeah,
Uh,
potentially,
that could be
definitely,
a risk in this game.
yeah, he's definitely rushing back to try and get in and play some games, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then in terms of finals MVP vote, this is quite in terms of UK odds. LeBron James is still favourite, which just shocks me. Only slight favourite, but I thought AD would be almost like a heavy favourite at the moment. Do you think that's them still anticipating a huge game from LeBron? Or you just think they've just got the odds wrong there, and that AD's probably going to win Finals MVP now?
Yeah, I think it's that way because LeBron is LeBron. I think he has been playing incredibly well, and he's on an upward trend still at the moment. His game two was better than game one, and maybe he will continue to pick up. Like you said, the more they get to grips with AD, the lower his efficiency might go, and the more LeBron will pick up. But I think it's just more like habit. Whatever LeBron team has gone to the finals, he has been the man on that team. And this is the first team where he can take a little bit of a backseat offensively because this is the series for AD. Like he's just being dominant. What was he, 15 from 20 the other night?
Yeah.
His efficiency is incredible at the moment. And for me, he is the finals MVP at this moment in time. But I could easily see it, like you said, swinging to LeBron's side if they use Bam on AD and figure him out a bit more, and LeBron starts taking control, maybe goes for 35 in the pick and rolls, gets his triple doubles as well in the next two games. It could easily swing either way at this point. But for me, it's AD so far.
Yeah, I completely agree. And we're both seeing there to be three more games left in this series at 4-1. A lot can happen in three games. Either of those players could score 40 points across two of those games, couldn't they? And just win themselves the award. That's how dominant they are. So we'll have to see. Let's move on and finish with a little bit of Doc Rivers chat. Obviously, the other team from LA. He was fired by the Clippers after 7 years. He's now been fired twice by the Clippers, once as GM, once as coach, which I just found an interesting little trend. Two playoff series with the Clippers where he was up 3-1 and lost. Two other playoff series with the Clippers where he was up 2-0. Oh, no, sorry. One other one where he was up 2-0 and lost. And apparently this was an owner decision. So the owner, Steve Ballmer, spoke to the players on their exit interviews, as they do with every team, really, at the end of a season. And after that, he decided that it was the right thing to fire Doc Rivers. Apparently the GM, who is a friend of Doc Rivers, did disagree. And he thought it was more of a player issue. But Steve Ballmer disagreed and wanted to fire the coach. So we've news on where he's gone after. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But just in terms of the Clippers, and Doc Rivers, do you think this was a good decision? And do you think that even if it is the players that they're under contract now, they're not going to be free agents, and moving them is going to be hard, so you kind of had to do something? Or do you just see that as a bad decision and that playoff P is the issue?
I think there's many issues with this Clippers team. I think one of them is potentially the coaching. Doc Rivers has been there a long time, and he is a quality coach. He's one of those top tier coaches, but for whatever reason, he's not been enough for that franchise and that team and the squad. He's got to just take that extra step to go a little bit further. And that's with having superstar players playing for him. You know, back in the Lob City days, Chris Paul, Blake Griffin in his peak, and DeAndre Jordan in his peak, with Jamal Crawford out there, still wasn't enough for them to get, even to conference finals. So they definitely needed to change something. And like I said, it's maybe slightly harder to change the personnel on the floor. So yeah, why not give this a go? There's a lot of coaches out there looking for an opportunity. There's so much movement.
Crazy how much movement this off season there's been.
So much movement. So why not take the risk? Because you're not going to be the only club out there that might be sort of struggling under new management, and you can kind of use that as a bit of an excuse or a bit of a tool or whatever it may be. So I don't think this is the best thing the Clippers could do, but I think it could potentially spark a massive improvement, depending on who they get in to replace him.
Yeah, that is a factor that we're going to. Well, we could talk about it before we move on to where Doc's gone, if you want. I agree with you though that I think that you can't do a lot with these players because I think a couple of their attitudes aren't right. People aren't going to want to give you enough for them, and you don't want to be trading away bench players and giving up picks. So that's not an option. I don't think that the optics as an owner or a GM look right if you try and trade any of your big 3 or 4 players because you've spent all this assets to get them to the team. So I think that they were kind of backed into a corner, and if they didn't think that it was going to work with Doc and these players together, that Doc was the kind of easiest one to fire, unfortunately for him.
Yeah.
But in a minute, we'll talk about where he's gone, and obviously, in the end, it's not worked out bad. It's not like he's going to be unemployed, so that's good for him. But in terms of who the Clippers should get, there's been a report from Woj that even though some fans thought this might be the case, that Ty Lue is not the guaranteed option to replace Doc Rivers. It's not a case of like, oh, we've got the head coach in waiting. He's going to be interviewed, he's going to be part of the process, but he's not guaranteed. Obviously, there's so many coaches out of work and so many different options they could go with, and it's hard to pinpoint where. But what are your thoughts on them kind of saying that Ty Lue is not the definite man? Do you think that's just smokescreen and that he's already in the building and that he probably will be, or you think that they might have their eyes on someone else?
I hope it's not a smokescreen. I feel like it's such an important role that you shouldn't just be like, yeah, he's the guy, we're going straight with him. I think they should, even if you are like 90% sure you want someone like Ty Lue to be your next head coach, you should definitely interview a couple of others because they might come in with this incredible idea and really be an outside bet to sort of take your team to the next level. I don't think you should be single track minded with anything like this. For once, everybody take note of this. I'm going to praise the Knicks on the fact that they interviewed so many head coaches because they've got a great track record of going, right, your next one in you come, and not really spending the time to experiment and research and really, yeah, just get out there and do the research and hear from everybody, because you could be employing somebody that's completely wrong for your team. You know, he could be that he puts forward all the same ideas that Doc's been doing, and you don't know. You just don't know unless you interview and go through that rigorous process. So I think it's really great that they've not pinned someone on and said, you're our next one.
Yeah, and a couple of other options. In-house Sam Cassell, who's another one of Doc's assistants. Him and Ty Lue are both the next top assistants on the coaching staff. And he's been mentioned as well. He's really high in the bookies odds. Never been a head coach before, but he's been with the Doc and been with the Clippers, and been with Doc for a while. Apparently, the Rockets are also looking at Sam Cassell. And apparently, he's a bit of a defensive mastermind in terms of his scheme. So that could be another option in-house, which is maybe a reason why they haven't also announced Ty Lue straight away. Maybe if they've got 2 people in-house they like, they want to do their due diligence on both of those. Mr. Jeff Van Gundy and Mr. Phil Jackson have been mentioned in bookies as well, as always. Jeff Van Gundy gets mentioned for every job ever.
Yeah.
Surprised he's not been mentioned for, like, no one else will know this, but me and Ben will. Stroud head coach where we live. That's how many roles he gets linked with. Phil Jackson could just be because he's a friend of Steve Ballmer and obviously the whole Lakers connection, but he's too old. He's not going to want to coach. And then Alvin Gentry was mentioned at one point, but we'll talk about him a little bit more in a minute. So personally, I think it's going to be one of Cassell or Lue, and I reckon they might have, like you said, not just want to be too hasty because they want to take their time and make the right decision. But also, if they've got 2 candidates in house, they want to take their time with those 2 guys. Because it would suck if you let one of your 2 leave and Ty Lue or him becomes the coach of like the Rockets, just saying, and the Rockets finish second in the West and the Clippers finish third. That would be a bit of a kick in the teeth that you let your coach walk out and lead another team to more wins.
Yeah.
So I think that'll be their process. But let's move on from everyone's favourite Clippers team, who we all now hate due to their actions in the playoffs. Let's talk about Mr. Doc Rivers. I believe he was officially unemployed for 7 hours before he was on a plane to Philadelphia to speak to the owners in Philly. A day after being fired from the Clippers, he was announced officially as head coach of the 76ers. It's a 5-year contract, which is quite long. He'll be one of the highest paid coaches in the league, which he is already. And before I move on to the little bit of other news with them, what were your initial thoughts on Doc? Well, within 24 hours being the 76ers coach, because I know you were just about to go to bed, and then I sent you a lovely screenshot saying Woj bomb, and it was the news that he was in Philly.
Yeah, what a shock that was.
Crazy.
I expected him to be out of work and slightly longer than that.
I thought he might take a year off, to be honest.
I'm not sure what to expect from him in Philly. I'm really intrigued by it. I'd quite like to see if he can manage the stars there better than he managed the ones in LA. I always struggle with Philly because it's kind of like, what can you do with that roster? To me, Doc Rivers seems, although he's hugely successful and what he does tends to work, especially regular season wise, what is he going to do differently with that team than the previous head coach has done? Whereas you've been looking at other people that come in that could make a bigger difference. For example, like Houston Rockets old head coach, what's his name? D'Antoni, yeah.
Yeah, he was favourite for the job.
Yeah, and he would definitely switch the team up and give it a sort of an injection of pace and working hard defensively, things like that. I'm interested to see what Doc can bring to the role, but I guess that also means it opens up D'Antoni. Could he like the Clippers now and run that system, which again will be hugely interesting.
Yeah, I was thinking that after we forgot to mention in the last part. I was just thinking that will open D'Antoni out to different options. He was favourite for 3 jobs. He was favourite for the Pelicans job at one point, then he was favourite for the Philly job, and he was favourite for the Pacers job. And the Pacers kind of mentioned him first. So yeah, I'm not sure where he's going to end up, but I agree with you on Doc. In a way, I think he'll install a little bit of more steel into the team, a little bit more grit. Which doesn't necessarily mean anything for winning a title, but I think it'll stop them having so many poor games in the regular season where they have these huge leads and they get people bring back on them or whatever. I think he's a much better defensive coach than Brett Brown. But offensively, the Clippers have always been very sluggish on offense. They had Chris Paul who basically ran the offense for them. And that's when they looked really good and fun because they had a point guard that could do that. And then last year, a lot of his offense is just like, oh, great, we've got two stars, and they can just play one-on-one basketball. And we saw in the Mavs series, if it wasn't for Porzingis' injury, that they probably could have got eliminated. And a lot of their offensive actions were just Kawhi and pick and rolls, and there was no scheme there. There was no real offensive firepower for a team that's got so many players. It was strange. The only time he's had success is that year when he had, obviously, that really young team the year before. And they were just running and gunning up and down, which maybe he could try and turn the 76ers into. But obviously, they've got players like Horford and Harris. It's not going to happen.
The young runners you want.
No, obviously, Harris was with him in LA at the Clippers and apparently didn't do very well. If you speak to Clippers fans, they don't like Tobias Harris. So I don't know if Doc's the right man to improve there. So I think offensively, they could struggle. I'm not quite sure how it's going to work, but on the other side, rumors are he wants to hire Alvin Gentry as his head assistant coach, and that could be a nice, interesting move. Ben, obviously, the Pelicans are quite known for being awful defensively, which Doc was good at with the Clippers.
Yeah.
But the Pelicans are also known for kind of that style of getting a lot of open 3-point shooters, a lot of transition basketball, a lot of offensive rebounds. Fast-paced play. something that Doc's not known for. I'm not sure if they're just friends because they've been around the league for a while and they're both on the coaches panel together. So I'm not sure if it's just great friends and he wants experience alongside him, or if maybe Doc is using Gentry to be the more offensive mind and he'll be the defensive mind. But do you think that Gentry could actually improve the team a little bit more when being alongside Doc if they can get him? Or you think that it won't make any odds if Doc's the head coach, he gets final say?
No, I think that's a great recipe there, combining those two like minds and thoughts. I think for me, that's the point behind having these additional coaches to make up for the places where you are lacking. There's no point getting obviously you want the coaches under you to do as they're asked when you ask them to, but you also don't want them to be yes men, because what if the things you're implementing aren't any good? And if no one's telling you, you're going to find out the hard way. Or what if you are, in this situation, a really, really good defensive coach, but your offensive sets and your offensive mind isn't quite as good as, say, an Alvin Gentry's, then he is the perfect person to hire to have under you to make up for where you're lacking. So that's a really, really sensible, really intelligent way, especially for somewhere like Philly, who have struggled on both ends of the floor more offensively than defensively. That's a really good way for them to go about covering up, or not covering up, but sort of tending to the issues that they have. And hopefully long term this season, we'll see a real difference in them. But for me, like we said before, the 76ers is a huge issue is lineups. Who do you have where? Is there any point keeping certain players around? Are they being played in the right position? Can they work with other players on the floor? Their roster seems to be such a mess. Yeah, I mean, maybe these two can come in and sort it out. Maybe they can find a way that these guys can play more efficiently together and more coherent.
Well, I think one thing about Doc is he's not afraid to upset people. And we saw with the Paul George trade that he obviously okayed, even though he wasn't the GM. But if he thinks something's right, he'll just do it for the team.
Yeah.
So I think whether or not his offense is a bit stodgy and he's a little bit not a forward-thinking coach as much as maybe a 76ers fan would like, and he's got this real bad record in the playoffs now over recent years. But I think no one could say that he doesn't speak his mind and he doesn't almost do what he wants to do. Whatever he thinks best, he'll do. So I think if he thinks it's best to move on a player or to put a player here or trade a player there, whatever it is, I think he, at least with all of his experience, same with Alvin Gentry, who traded obviously AD, I don't think that either of them will be afraid to kind of pull a trigger on a big trade or kind of upset a star if they have to.
Yeah.
So I think personality-wise, I think it could suit, but I'm not sure about the basketball fit. Let's just say that. But I think you wanted to mention something about Mr. Joel Embiid. Is that right?
Yeah, as soon as the tweets came out that they'd hired Doc Rivers, he tweeted out, didn't he? Was it so far away? Something like that?
Yeah.
Very cryptic.
Yeah, something like that.
But because we know he had okayed the D'Antoni hiring, it's come out and he said, "Yeah, I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that. I want to give him a go." And then, yeah, there was like a real mix that neither the GM or the owners really wanted Ty Lue. The GM wanted D'Antoni, but the owners wanted Doc Rivers or something like that. So they ended up going with Doc.
Okay. Yeah, I did read that as well, actually.
So it was a real, again, classic Philly style at the moment, a real mess of people sticking their oars in and trying to do stuff they shouldn't be, really. And this is how they've ended up. So they've still got a lot to iron out behind the scenes, I think, before we see a cohesive team on the court in January.
Yeah, I would agree. But it'd be interesting. Like we said, there's a lot of turnover in general with the coaches. And over the off-season, we're going to do a coaches episode, I think, aren't we? Where we're going to do some predictions for how they're all going to do. Because I think we're going to have 9 different I might be wrong, but I think it's 9 different starting head coaches for next season, or 10, which is the most in years. Which is just, I think the league could be even crazier next year with all the change, don't you?
Yeah, what we'll do is we'll get a big corkboard out and a photo of every coach, and then like loads of red yarn, and we'll just sort of map it all out in a really complicated, complex way for us to try and follow. I think that's probably the best way to do it.
Yeah, that sounds fun. We get to work on that. Socially distanced, of course.
Of course, yeah. Well, the corkboard's going to have to be so big, there's no way we could be close to each other. There's so many changes. I've got a quick fire question for you actually as well.
Yeah, go for it.
Going on things that have been popping up on social media. Past 2 games, Udonis Haslem has given some incredibly passionate speeches on the sidelines. Do you think the Heat, at this point in time, with their backs against the wall, should give him 5 minutes just to get out there and get a bit of grit, bit of grind, bit of energy, just to upset things on the floor? Or do you think keeping him just giving the speeches is the way forward?
Yeah, keep him to the speeches. if you could put him in a suit and make him assistant coach and get him to do the speeches from there, that'd be even better, I think.
That's what they did with Juwan Howard. I don't know if you remember that. He was on with the championship Heat teams, and he ended up just in the suit giving speeches, basically.
No, I think he's too old now. Isn't he 40?
He's 40, yeah.
He's just too slow. But his speeches as well, I only saw one of them. But his speeches are very good, very, very empowering. Obviously, they lost both games, so made no odds. But no, I wouldn't be playing Udonis Haslem. But if they are losing at any point, I think they should, because I think he's going to retire this year. So I think if they are losing in the fourth in either of the games and it's insurmountable, I think they should give him some time, just because I'm obviously not a Heat fan, but any Heat fan you speak to absolutely loves Haslem.
Legend.
He's been there for years, absolute legend for the franchise. So if he is to retire, then I think he deserves a bit of a send-off.
He was that 03 draft with LeBron and Dwayne Wade and all that lot. So he's been there since then.
Yeah, 17 years. Next year will be his 18th season if he goes again with them.
Yeah.
But we'll have to see. We will have to see. Wow. Cool. Was that a good place to end it then?
I think so.
All right. Well, I think our plan is to come back together for another chat, probably after game 4, I imagine. So we could have an NBA champion, or we could be going into a pivotal, I can say, pivotal game 5. So we'll have to see. But we will speak to you later on in the week, and I'll speak to you soon, Ben.
Yes. Can't wait. Bring it on. Let's go.
Let's go, Bam.